Ready to get the fit body of your dreams? Welcome to the FITBODY podcast. I'm Julie Laurie, an IFBB Fitness Pro, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. Back in 2004, I created one of the world's first online personal training programs and have helped thousands of women transform their bodies and their lives online ever since. I've been featured in fitness magazines worldwide and even competed on American Ninja Warrior. But my passion is helping women love both how they look and how they feel through balanced workouts and healthy eating. But let's be real, it's information overload out there, and it's hard to know what to do. You need a no-nonsense way to stay motivated and accountable in a world that can feel like it's swirling around you. My mission is to take away the guesswork for highly driven women ready to supercharge their metabolism and get to their personal best. Hello. Welcome back to the FITBODY podcast. In my work with women who are in their 40s and 50s and either perimenopausal or menopausal, I notice that there is a significant increase in their cortisol levels. And it can happen, of course, to women of any age, but that 40-50s period seems to be a time when our bodies are changing significantly. Obviously, our hormones are changing. But it becomes a struggle to lose weight. And the things that you have done in the past that have worked to help you kind of lose a bit, just tightening up with your nutrition, your training, those things aren't working as well anymore. Well, there's some reasons for that. So today I want to talk about how cortisol affects weight loss and ways that we can help work towards recovery with that. If we want to understand how cortisol can impact weight loss, we need to first understand what cortisol is, what it does. So cortisol is a hormone. It's released in our bodies, particularly when we're stressed. So that's why it's kind of got this bad rap as being the air quote stress hormone. But your body knows what it's doing because cortisol does have many functions. It does help regulate our metabolism. Cortisol is linked to reducing inflammation throughout your body. If you have ever thought about those increases and dips in our blood sugar, well, cortisol is one of the hormones that helps control our blood sugar. Cortisol is also linked to our circadian rhythms. So those sleep-wake cycles, if you're noticing changes with your sleep, that could be part with cortisol. And cortisol boosts our energy. It gives us this rush to help us handle stress. So when it comes to weight loss, it's crucial that we really understand more about the role that cortisol plays, particularly with our cravings and our metabolism. So how specifically does cortisol affect your weight? Do you find that there's times when you are under a lot of stress and it becomes really difficult to avoid like the donut or a cookie or some kind of sweet treat or fried food? That has to do with your cortisol. If you're seeking out a big slice of cake for comfort, when things get really emotional, if there's a deadline at work that you feel under a lot of stress with, and you're finding it really hard to avoid heading to the vending machine and getting a Reese cup, which can be difficult all the time. That's one of my favorites. But if it's particularly difficult at times to avoid, they got that M&M jar or there's donuts out at work. Those are times when your body is really responding to stress and your cortisol is increasing. So, cortisol really can make you do all that. It makes you have those sugary, salty, fatty food cravings. So cravings are really linked to cortisol. Cortisol does actually indeed make you stress eat. If you find that you are eating greater quantities, that stress eating could be related to cortisol. Cortisol is part of that natural fight or flight response. It makes your brain think that you need to load up on food to fight off whatever or whoever is causing you stress. So stress eating is real. It's a normal reaction of our bodies. But the weight gain that comes with it when you're chronically stressed and our cortisol levels get stuck on overdrive is something that we want to address. So, I've talked about that having some cortisol is good. We actually have to have some. However, it's the times when we are chronically stressed where our cortisol levels kind of get stuck on high. It can't seem to come down, and that's part of our body's response. So what do we do? How do we identify first? What are the signs and symptoms that you might have high cortisol? So if you do constantly feel stressed out, that could be a good indication that your cortisol levels may be high as well. So let's talk through some of these signs and symptoms that we're constantly on overdrive. Number one would be weight gain. For women, they notice weight gain, particularly around your abdomen or your core, but also places like your face or even your chest. If you feel a lot of anxiety and depression are linked to high cortisol levels. So if you're feeling that kind of constant stress of anxiety and worry, sadness with depression, you could have some issues with your cortisol levels there as well. A really good indicator is high blood pressure. If you have chronically high blood pressure, that is a stress response, and cortisol levels could be elevated with that. You might also notice things like skin changes or having problems with your digestion. And one that a lot of women don't think about necessarily being linked to cortisol is unhealthy sleep patterns. So if you're noticing that you're having trouble either getting to sleep or you're waking up multiple times in the middle of the night, how often have you been there where it's 2:00 in the morning and you just can't shut your brain down? That could be linked to higher cortisol levels. So those are all some of the signs and symptoms that cortisol levels might be off. There's actually one more as well, your cycle or your periods. Hormone changes definitely impact our cycles, and it can be difficult because when you're in that perimenopausal age, cycles can come and go irregularly anyhow. But if you happen to be noticing that your cycles are either longer in the days in frequency or shorter, if you notice more, they're being spaced out more or just inconsistent, while not necessarily cortisol related, it could possibly be related to your cortisol levels. When I first began working with a woman online, I try to identify some of those issues to see if high cortisol might be a reason that they're having trouble losing the weight they'd like to lose. So let's talk through, how does high cortisol make it hard to lose weight? So if you've got too much of the stress hormone throughout your body, it's going to impact your functions. So all of those functions that are related to weight, your metabolism, your moods, your digestion, and like we said, even your sleep patterns. So those things in particular have a huge impact on your weight loss goals. Chronic stress has been proven to make us overeat, so it can knock our metabolisms out of whack. And, there's a lot of studies that show that women who secrete higher levels of cortisol really do eat more than those women that secrete less. It's not just that it's impacting your metabolism, that you're physically eating more calories, which of course is linked to weight gain. Another reason weight loss becomes really challenging with high cortisol levels is because our bodies are producing less testosterone. As women, we need to have some testosterone. Obviously not the level that a man would have, but that's something women in their 40s and 50s in particular begin to see a real decline in their testosterone levels. So there is a balance between our cortisol and testosterone. So testosterone is what helps us build muscle mass. It keeps our metabolism high. But when we see a decrease there, you're going to burn fewer calories throughout the day, just with all of your normal activities. So why can cortisol cause increases in belly fat? I mentioned earlier that one of the places women that have chronically high cortisol hold weight is at their stomach. So their abdomen, lower back, that kind of spare tire that, a lot of times we'll call it like a menopause belly. So some of that can be linked to cortisol. So it's not only that cortisol can impact where that you actually are putting on weight, it impacts where you put it on. It's also important to know that fat that's stored in the abdominal area tends to be the visceral type of fat. And that's the kind of fat that we really don't want, because that leads to strokes and heart attacks, potentially, just a higher percentage probability. So we really want to identify why cortisol is increasing and understand better the impact that it has on our body. The good news is that there are natural ways that we can lower our cortisol levels to help us lose weight. Now that we know exactly how cortisol levels affect our weight, here are my tips. So, number 1, healthy eating and being mindful of your intake. I know it seems obvious, but eating healthy foods can actually lower your cortisol levels. We really need to watch what we're eating, not necessarily the amount. I don't want you to overeat, but I want you to eat plenty of the good, healthy, wholesome foods. With my online training clients, I consider vegetables completely unlimited. That means that you just really can't eat too much broccoli or too big of a salad. My caveat there is always that you have to be mindful of the extra fats or oils that you might be adding in if you're having like salad dressing or putting butter on your vegetables. But vegetables themselves are super high in nutrients, super low in calories, have lots of fiber, just really can't eat too many of those. And when we're talking about stress hormones, healthy eating and having the right amount of vitamins, having some complex carbs, having omega-3 fatty acids, those are great foods for reducing stress. We all know, though, eating healthy and being mindful of your intake can be challenging, especially when you're busy and on the go. So I do like to think ahead with your food and make sure that you've got a solid plan, that you're being mindful of your caloric intake without obsessing about it. So listening to your natural hunger cues and eating when your body is ready to eat, but making sure that the choices that you're making are healthy and good ones. The second tip I have for ways you can naturally lower your cortisol levels is to stay active. And whether it is a sport that you do, whether it's hitting the gym or walking, physical exercise hugely impacts both our mental health and our bodies. So we can actually help regulate our stress hormones if we are active. And while I love to see women strength training, and I highly recommend that, getting outside and enjoying nature, hiking, biking, walking daily, that kind of general activity makes a huge impact as well. So really important to try to do both of those. I can't overemphasize how important it is that you're active and that you move your body frequently. Another really important way to help manage cortisol levels for weight loss is to make sure you're getting enough sleep. And yes, I know cortisol level being off can affect your sleep in the first place. So it might be more difficult to get to sleep, or you might find that you're waking up multiple times in the middle of the night. However, we really need to strive to get quality sleep. So going to bed at a consistent time, making sure that you're waking up at a consistent time each day, getting in that pattern can be really helpful. Avoiding blue light, avoiding electronics immediately before bed, or setting up a nighttime ritual that helps you helps you get ready for bed, helps you get your mind in a place where it can relax and go to sleep. And that kind of leads me to my next tip, which is to practice some breathing exercises. I love including yoga and meditation in my weekly activity exercise program. So that can be something, yoga and meditation in particular, or even simply doing some deep breathing exercises, that can lower your stress and anxiety levels. Deep breathing itself causes your brain to think you're in a relaxed state, even if you're actually not. It lowers your heart rate, and then your blood pressure, and then your cortisol. So it's this cascade that helps. Just taking that, even just 3 deep breaths, slow in, slow out, can help ground you, can help lower that cortisol level, and really can impact your weight loss. There are also some habits that that are linked to higher levels of cortisol. So if you're a smoker or if you drink significant amounts of alcohol, those have both been shown to increase our cortisol levels. So not only can alcohol in particular add up in calories, but it also bumps up your cortisol. And in fact, studies have shown too that smoking can increase your cortisol levels in the long run. It might feel like it's relieving stress at the time. Over time, smoking can lead to increases in your stress levels and increases in the amount of cortisol that is secreted. I get it that alcohol is a social thing, and I enjoy a nice glass of wine myself. What we really need to make sure is that is in moderation and that you are spacing drinking out. So it really is something that's the occasion that you do occasionally, maybe socially, a nice glass of wine or a single drink with your husband or friends, but it's not every weekend and it's certainly not every day. Everyday drinking can definitely increase your cortisol levels, making it really, really tough to lose weight. And my final and favorite, honestly, this is truly my favorite way to decrease cortisol levels. It's to see the sun and surround yourself with nature. There's all kinds of studies that show that not getting enough sun and being indoors too often can impact your hormone levels and your cortisol levels in particular. Getting outside, enjoying this amazing earth that God has created for us makes a huge difference on your stress levels. It's amazing. So hiking is one of my favorite things to do. In fact, I've got a hiking trail near my house that it's only 1 mile long. It's not a huge hiking trail, but it's such a nice way to get in the woods, enjoy the fresh air, get a little exercise in, all of these things that together lower our stress levels and decrease the amount of cortisol that our bodies are secreting. Okay, well, I hope that this episode of the FitBody podcast has given you a lot to think about with cortisol and with our stress hormone. I hope you have found some ways that you can, first of all, identify if you do have high cortisol levels and if that might be impacting your weight loss goals. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to me at fitbody.com or julielaurie.com. But thank you so much for joining me on the FitBody podcast, and I will see you again real soon. Thank you for joining me on the FitBody podcast. Looking forward to sharing more health and fitness information with you soon. Want more information about my online personal training for women or the world's best supplements and protein powder? Check out fitbody.com for more info.